Well, Kirsten, thank you for being here today. I appreciate your time. I am Kate Wessel. I am on the editorial team over here at School Social Work Network. And one of my areas of interest is leadership. And I have had the pleasure of getting to know Ms. Mickish in some collaboration we've done. And I thought she would be a great guest to interview. Kirsten, I'll tell you a little bit about. She is CEO of Connect Human, a startup she co-founded with her son with a mission to create human connection that improves well-being and performance. Kirsten has been a student of human and organizational behavior for over 2 decades, having led all aspects of human resources at global companies and multiple industries with a focus on talent, learning and development, diversity, equity, and inclusion, change transformation. She's a speaker, consultant, certified coach with specialized training in social emotional intelligence. And Kirsten and I connected through your work with Connect Human. And Connection Zoo. So it through our conversations and collaboration, I think that I've been able to pick up some of your work in that human resource world. And I just feel like you are a wealth of knowledge, which I'm super curious about. So thank you for being here. Is there anything that you would want to add to that introduction?
I don't think so. I think, the only thing I would add is, given the topic of leadership, not only have I been a leader for many years, but I have done a lot of work in leadership development and leadership coaching, and it's a not only an area of expertise, but an area of great interest for me as well. So, yeah.
Well, and just to give a little background, so my interest in leadership came from a few years ago. I was accepted into this leadership program, Leadership Academy, through my district in collaboration with a few other member districts. And it opened up my world to the fact that I was a leader within a district, even though I wasn't an administrator. And just this whole idea of being a teacher leader. And again, I'm a school social worker, not a teacher. So kind of there's all these things that it just kind of felt awkward and clunky. But through, my year-long journey through this course, through this workshop, there was so much information out there regarding leadership, how to do leadership. And it wasn't catered towards education. A lot of it came from business and social science. And it felt like there was a huge disconnect there. So one of the things that I am hoping to do today is to reconnect and build a bridge. Cool. Yeah, awesome. Well, Kirsten, how would you define or describe leadership?
Yeah, well, there's 2 definitions that are my favorite that come from experts in this space. The first one is one that a guy named Kevin Kruse, who's the author of Employee Engagement 2.0. And the other one is from one of the books that I would recommend that I'll talk more about, Leadership from the Inside Out. And it's the author is Kevin Cashman. And when I read their definitions, I want you to really listen to them in general, but also in the context of what you just said about your experience and about the kind of context or circumstances of the folks that are listening to this. So the first one, it's the process of social influence which maximizes the efforts of others towards achievement of a goal. The second one is authentic influence that creates value. So a couple things, there's 2 things that are very much the same in both of those. The word influence.
Yes.
Social influence, authentic influence, but influence is a big part of it. And the other is, and they say it differently, maximizing the efforts of others and towards achievement of a goal, right? And what Kevin Cashman says is in a way that creates value, right? And so there's an outcome, a valuable outcome to it as well. What you do not hear in either of these definitions is anything to do with title, with seniority, right? Number of years of experience, with place in the organization, nothing. And so whether you are in a situation where you're leading an initiative or you're in the front of a classroom, or you're with one child, you are in a leadership role. Parents in their homes are in a leadership role. They're the leaders of their homes, right?
Yeah.
You are in a position in all of those situations to influence value, and to do it through the talents and energy of the others that you're with.
I appreciate that. And I love what I really held on to was that influence piece. And I think that there can be a reluctance in people who don't have the title, which again was not part of the definitions that you shared. It can feel powerless sometimes and disenfranchising. And I think that we can lose some of our agency when we assign leadership specifically to supervisors, principals, administrators, superintendents. It was very empowering to me to really be able to call myself a leader and to really understand that. So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
This is a great lead. And what do you see as the benefit of claiming leadership in non-traditional leadership roles?
Yeah, well, my experience in all of the companies that I have worked in is that the people at the top don't always know what's actually happening in the organization. They don't, they unfortunately, and I luckily recognized this as I got higher in my organizations, it's really easy to become disconnected in formal leadership roles from the rest of the organization if you don't make an effort and you don't have an intention to stay connected. So the people who are in the game, that are doing the work, that are on the front lines, they hold the wisdom. They know what is happening. They know where the pain points are. Oftentimes they know what the solutions are. They don't necessarily always have all the resources to put those solutions in place, but what I think is one of the benefits of giving leadership and allowing leadership, or claiming it if no one's invited you or given it to you, is that no matter what position you're in any kind of organization, something probably that is valuable. And where the pain points are, you have ideas about how to solve. And when we can tap into all of those different perspectives in the organization, we are more likely to solve the problems that need to be solved and to come up with solutions that actually work, that actually can be implemented in a way that makes sense, and that gets us the value that we're setting out to get. The other thing is what I have found is when people step up from different places in the organization to lead, there's often a different kind of credibility, because I know what I'm going through. I know you can relate to me, and so I'm excited that I have a voice, that I have somebody who can be my voice. So that credibility, I think, is also very helpful in terms of when you go to implement solutions. Getting buy-in from people, getting them engaged in helping you implement, is the only way you can be successful. And so if I feel like you know me, you know what I'm going through, you're my voice, when you come back to me and say, here's what we're going to do and I need you engaged, I'm more likely to be in.
And that buy-in from your team, your colleagues, your coworkers. Yeah. So this isn't on our original roster of questions, but I'm going to throw it out there because it just sparked a conversation I had with a colleague who just shared some reluctance to share some ideas and perspective with higher up administration. And how do you do that in a way that doesn't feel out of turn, or doesn't step on toes, or doesn't come across? I think that there's so much reluctance to take that risk.
Yeah, this actually, I think, gets to, if you want me to talk about this now, some of the there's kind of five 5 key elements that I think you have to bring to the party when you're stepping up to be in a leadership role. I don't care whether you have a formal leadership role or not, that are just critical. And one of them speaks directly to that.
Oh, sure.
And so the first thing is you need to see yourself as a leader. So you need to start there, right? Because and I'm going to, I know at the end you were going to, say, hey, who are some of the experts? But
Yeah.
I'm one way. So if you're not familiar with Amy Cuddy, and she has a book called Presence, but I'm going to tell you, go Google her TED Talk. You can read the book, but Google her TED Talk. And she has done this incredible research around body language and posture. And so as a starting point, if I see myself as a leader and I come to you and you're a more senior leader, and I say, so Kate, I have an idea, and I'm, do you have time? Could I share my idea? Or I could come and go, Kate, so I have an idea that I want to share with you. I've done a lot of work behind this, right? Just this, and you can even try it on your own. If you make a statement, do the same statement sitting like this, and do the same statement sitting like this, and it literally affects how you feel, and it certainly affects how people perceive you, right?
Yeah.
The first thing is come into your leadership self, right? And she talks a lot about power posing and some things you can do to prepare for that. I'll let you watch the TED Talk. So number 1, see yourself as a leader. Number 2, get really, really clear on purpose and outcomes, right? Why are you, if you come to me and you want to share something, why is this important to you? What's the purpose of this conversation? Being very, very clear and as crisp as you can, 1 or 2 sentences. What's the purpose? And what are the outcomes? Purpose, problem being solved, and outcomes, right? And when I say outcomes, that doesn't mean I've already got the solution. What it means is I could say, if we solve this problem, here's what will be different, right? So I maybe don't know how to do it yet, or maybe I do have ideas. Okay, so you need to make sure that you're very clear on that, and then you get aligned. So you're part of your purpose, typically then, with a senior leader, is to make sure that they understand there is a problem to be solved, and that's why you're coming to them. And then the second purpose usually is to get aligned, to get agreement with, do you see that? Do you understand? Do you align with me? Because if you're aligned around, yes, there's a problem, yes, it needs to be solved, and here's what could happen if we did, huge. One of the things I like to do is ask questions that I know the answer to. and I don't do that to be manipulative, but what I mean by that is I could say, what if we were able to, and I don't know if I have a good example, but what if we were able to have a greater level of engagement from parents with the kids that we work with? What if would that be something that the school that would be important to the school? Probably the answer is going to be yes. Okay. So if you can get agreement around something like that up front, you've now just opened the door to say, I have an idea how we can do that. So it sounds like that's important to you. Yeah, it is important to me. It's important to us too. We have an idea about how we can do that, right? So where you can find places of agreement, do that as early as you can. Okay. So that alignment. So show up feeling like a leader, align, and then start where you are, right? Now, this is where you want to really get clear about what's our culture, who are the people that have influence, whether they have positional influence or personal influence, right? But who has the power, right? So culture, people, and what resources do we have? What have we tried? Some of those things, right? But so first be a student of all of that. Really observe, really learn, how do things get done around here and who gets them done? So because you want to make sure that you're kind of playing by the rules, if you will. And that doesn't mean you can't break some rules, but you need to be mindful. Book 3, I think it is, right? This one is one of my favorite business books. It's called Orbiting the Giant Hairball.
I like it.
And I won't tell you the whole premise of it for time's sake, but it's really about understanding the context and the culture within which you work so that you can be very connected to it, but not lose yourself in it, but be able to bring your magic within the context of how things get done, right? 4 is to have tough conversation. And this is my favorite book on that, Crucial Conversation. And there's, and I've done whole workshops on this, but how do you have, when you think there's going to be tension or when tension arises, some kind of conflict, how can you listen first, ask good questions, and then come forward with a point of view, but in a way that helps connect versus divide, right? So those crucial conversations, and that's where your own social and emotional intelligence is really, really, really important.
And I think as social workers, we can be very good at having those tough conversations with kids, with families, with teachers, if it's about their students. But then if we have to have it with a supervisor or sometimes with a colleague or an administrator, that confidence kind of, it goes out the door. And it is difficult, right? You know, we have those difficult conversations with parents all the time that are uncomfortable, and we can power through those.
Yeah, so draw upon that practice, draw upon that, you know, where do you find your confidence in those conversations?
Yeah.
And see how you can think about how you can draw upon that same confidence in these situations. And it kind of goes back to that step 1, be a leader, like show up as a leader, right? In your mind. Yep.
Yes.
That last one, step number 5, is to ask for help, call upon your community, right? And so a lot of times what I'll do is go, hey, I need to go have a conversation with so-and-so, and either I think it's going to go okay, but I really want to show up, you know, kind of ready for this, or I don't know if it's going to go okay. Can I practice with you? Yeah. Or I know that you were able to influence this person. Can you help me understand, you know, what were the things that you did that helped with that, right? So we'll put, it sounds like you do a blog, and we'll put kind of steps 1 through 5, but those are the things, if I boil it down to 5 things, those are the things that I think equip you to go in and do what you need to do.
I love it. And I think that's such a useful list. And going back to that whole piece of kind of knowing your culture, it reminds me of just that whole like analysis assessment of stakeholders and seeing who those people are involved in. Really, you know, as social workers, we are evaluators of systems, and systems are bigger than our school. It's our students, it's our community, it's our parents, it's our wider district, it's our state, and really just knowing who the culture is, who the system is, and depending on that, knowing that there's some support there within that system. I appreciate that.
I always, in any kind of change initiative, a stakeholder analysis and a stakeholder plan is one of my key tools. And the way I look at it is looking at stakeholders and groups. Who are the people that need to know? Who are the people that need to be involved, right? So the really core stakeholders. Who are the people that need to know? Who are the people, outer ring, that think they need to know, but they don't really need to know. But we need to include them because they're in a position or whatever, or they can get in our way. We need to let them know. And I'll have strategies for each of those groups, but then I will look at within each of those groups, who are the people that are going to champion this? Because I want to have a special plan to actively engage them in championship, if you will, and being advocates. And who are the people that are likely going to get in my way? Because I want a special individual plan for them to early on engage them, get their ideas, have them help me think through it. Because then when I present it and say, Jan, who part of what I'm presenting to you comes from a brilliant conversation I had with Jan. Well, Jan's not going to disagree with you now because you've just said part of this comes from Jan, and Jan's going to be like, yep, I was part of this.
I love hearing you talk about this and how natural it is, and how much it makes sense, especially coming from your corporate background. And it was so eye-opening for me when I just kind of saw, I think they used like a T-grid model of stakeholders and high, low, and influence, and where they were there. And it was so helpful to see how intentional and thought out we can be in our work around leadership and change efforts and sustaining programming and initiatives that are important to our work and important to the communities we serve.
One other thing on stakeholders is to
Yeah.
remember that, and I think about like a lot of the manufacturing companies or sites that I worked in, is that so often people who are, on the production lines aren't thought about as stakeholders. And or
Yes.
people in, and again, I always start out with who are all the people that have information or influence or that really need to be in that kind of inner ring in terms of their core to this change initiative, and
Yeah.
how might I engage them. But starting really broad first, you don't include everyone, but considering everyone before so start big, and then you can eliminate groups and eliminate people to get to those core. But so often we forget people that can be so incredibly helpful or not.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It reminds me of when we rolled out, there's a PBIS, it's Positive Behavior Interventions and Supports.
Yep.
It's a whole model for building positive school climate. And one of the things I appreciated is that how in depth they take that stakeholder analysis, where you are working with everybody in the school, from teachers to principals to parents, kids, custodians, folks who are working in the lunchroom. Everybody knows the same language and gets that same level of training.
Yeah.
And things fall apart, right, if you don't do that whole analysis.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a system, right? And if
it
there's
is.
the system that aren't in, you will diminish your results, if not, completely undermine them.
Absolutely.
Not thinking about it from a system perspective.
Yeah. What would you say, what are some other cautions you have for folks who are, one of the things they talk about, the term for teachers in that non-traditional leadership role is teacher leader, which I would say a lot of school social workers are, even though we're not teachers. I think a lot of us step into that teacher leadership role. What are some cautions that you might give?
Yeah, I mean, I think one goes back to that number one, not seeing yourself as a leader. If
Yeah.
you don't, this is one of the, if you don't believe you're a leader, no one else will either. So on the flip side of that is ego, right? So both of those you need to watch, and each of us are more predisposed to one or the other, and so keeping that in check, I think that's a big one. Two, I think, is not in, well, and we kind of talked about this, not engaging the people that need to be involved. I think a big one is not having the problem clearly defined and not having outcomes. Again, not solutions, but what will be different and what's the value in that. If you don't have that outlined clearly and aren't aligned, and the people who need to be involved aren't aligned around that, I don't care how much effort and how much pizzazz and savvy influence you put into it, you're not going to achieve what you need to achieve. And I think the other one is around relationships. And I think about this in terms of change initiatives. I think about this in terms of networking, kind of all of this is you don't want to develop a relationship with someone only when you need them. That's not what that's a transactional relationship. You can do that. And sometimes transactional relationships are okay, right? For example, if I call a customer service line because MediaCom, which is always giving me trouble, I don't need a relationship with that person. I only need it for that transaction, fix my problem, right? But I think what we're talking about here is not transactional stuff, right? And so you don't want to just call upon people and try to be in relationship with them just to get something done. So that's where I go back to really being a student of how things get done through, in terms of culture and people and resources and all of those things, and developing those relationships in advance of need, and doing that from the perspective of mutual benefit, mutual value. So, you may, and if you're really paying attention and you're getting to know people, you'll start to understand what are their pain points, what are their goals, and if you have anything that can contribute to them accomplishing their goals or solving their problems, then when you come back to them at some point and say, I need your help, of course they're going to help. And then just being the kind of person and doing this in a very authentic way, but saying hi to people. I mean, that is so simple. but there's a lot of times you pass people day after day after day, and you don't even say hi to them, you don't acknowledge them, and then at some point you need them, and then you're wondering why don't they want to. Well, because you never noticed them before.
Yeah.
Right. They're people that are in your environment. So just acknowledging is a good starting point.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think as school social workers, we are part of a larger system, usually within a school or a few schools, depending on districts and budgets and all of that. And I think it is so important to foster those relationships, especially just on that minimum level of needing to affect change for individual students.
Mm-hmm.
Making sure that you create that relationship and aren't dismissive of at any level, because one day maybe that kid's going to do something and you're going to have to call on your building custodian or go problem solve with your music teacher, and you just don't know when. So absolutely know your team and know your people. Yeah.
Yep.
Kirsten, we might have hit on this a little bit because I think this got sparked in a previous question, but as I said, as school social workers, we really strive to create healthy systems for the communities we support. And in creating that system, I think we often identify weaknesses and strengths, and that can often lead to change efforts, to identifying, hey, we don't have consistent messaging around student mental health or behavior interventions or delivery of different services. And so we are in that point of leading change efforts. And in your experience as teacher leaders in that non-traditional role, how can we best influence that change?
I mean, I think it does go back to when I think about influencing change, a couple things that I maybe touched on but didn't completely dive into come up to me. Number one, and you probably all know this, but good reminder, everyone experiences change differently, right? So there's going to be people that are like, yes, change, count me in, how can I help? And then you've got the continuum, and on the other end of the continuum is like, just leave things the way, like everything's good, like it's good enough, don't touch it, I don't like change, right? And you don't know, I mean, you may know where some people are, but it's really important to first of all meet people where they are. If they need to be a part of that change, don't assume that they're as excited as you are about the change, because possibly and probably they're not all. So meet them where they are, and to understand why they are where they are. What gets you excited about this? Why do you want to champion this? Because they're going to give you great talking points around influence. And those people that don't want to do it, what about this worries you, scares you, whatever it is, but what's underneath that I don't want to change? What is it? Because there may be some very real things that are underneath there in the system, as well as in the individual, that you need to understand. So really allowing people that, and then understanding the change process and kind of the change curve, and knowing that that when you change, it's a grieving process, right? So as much as you either know about grieving or can learn about grieving, you need to, for each person, especially those that are more reluctant, identify what do they think they're losing? What's the loss there? Acknowledge and honor that whatever they're losing is really going to be an actual loss to them, and find ways to help them grieve. And the more effectively they can grieve, the more quickly they can move through the change process. So helping them start to identify in the what might be different. If we are going to change, I understand that this, whatever this isn't working for you, doesn't feel good to you, whatever. Let's imagine together, through your perspective, what might make this a good change for you. Yeah. If X happens, you can say either this was okay, or actually this was pretty good. What would that be? And help them imagine, help them get a vision of what that could be. Now, if that what that could be that would make me feel good and help me through the change process faster is completely unrealistic, that's good to know, and you probably want to manage expectations. but helping them see what could be good, allowing them to grieve, and then kind of holding their hand through the process is really, really helpful.
It makes me think of too the danger of not helping them grieve, and being part of initiatives where I thought things were going smoothly and I was doing a great job, or the team that I was supporting and part of, we were doing a great job, and then there's all this little chatter of it just takes one person to kind of taint the pool, and then all of a sudden things just get twisted, in this great initiative, this great work that we've been doing kind of falls flat because staff start to lose morale and trust and confidence in it. So I'd never thought of really joining and processing and grieving with those folks. I think that is such a valuable tip.
Well, yeah, and here's the other thing you mentioned, the chatter. So one strategy I have used very successfully before is the first time I used it, we called it our Grapevine Gurus strategy, but we went, who are the people? So when you're looking at your organization and say who has influence, who are the people, and I put position titles aside, that have influence, and it could be influence, gossip influence. I don't care what kind of influence, but who are the people that when they talk, people listen, whether they're telling truth or not, and who are the people that when they know something, they go tell everyone, right? So identify who those people are and use them actively. So we had a big change that was going to take place, and there were a couple of people that I knew, as soon as they heard anything, they took and ran. And a lot of times they had to add their own information because they weren't in they were not in the formal communication channels. So what we did is I said, let's try this. And our leadership was like, okay. So the one woman, I called her and I said, hey, you may have heard that this may be happening. Yep, I have. I'm wondering if, I really value X about you. Could I share a little bit more insider information about this and then ask for your help? And she's like, yeah, because now I've said, you're important in this change initiative. And I've also said, now I'm going to ask you a question. I'm just going to listen. I just want to hear, you have a voice and I want to hear what you have to say. And so I said, what do you think about this change? Like, how do you think, all the people that, because you're really connected. We know how connected you are. What do you think other people are going to think about this? And then it was, all right, would you do me a favor and go out and tell everyone, like, I'm going to give you some information, like no one else has this information. If you want to go out and share this with people, you can go do that. Like, and she's like, okay. So now she has like this mission, this special assignment, and she goes out, and I cannot tell you, and I use that over and over and over after that first time, because it was incredible. And our grapevine, we filled the grapevine with facts. We filled the grapevine, and we did it with the way we positioned the messaging was based on what our Grapevine Gurus told us, spoke to the fears, spoke to what was important to the people that were in their grapevine. Incredible difference.
One of the things that comes to mind is I think sometimes when you experience those folks that are difficult to work with, or the grapevine
Gurus.
Gurus, yeah, I like that term. When they're the grapevine gurus, I think immediately in my head I get a block, and I'm like, that's unprofessional, like that's unethical, that's not cool. Like, why do they have a job? Why are they working? Like, I just spiral. And I think right, yeah, I never gossip ever. But I think it's so helpful to think about how to leverage and how to use their skills, their assets, right, their connections in a healthy, functional way, and build that relationship.
Yeah, I mean, make them part of the strategy, and it is very much in to honor what they bring to the, besides their technical expertise, they bring this incredible power of connection. And why wouldn't we want to use that in a way that helps them feel valuable, that uses that talent that they have and helps us move our agenda forward? The whole organization wins.
Kirsten, I have really appreciated your time and your conversation today. One of the things that I wanted to ask you at the end was to share your leadership influencers. And you came with a stack of books, which I love. I have, since we've been in quarantine, I've had to cut back on my purchase of, all my professional development books, but I'm excited to add to my list. So what do you have for us?
Well, I mentioned the one, and this is Leadership from the Inside Out, Kevin Cashman, and that's one in terms of one of the definitions that I used. I also mentioned Orbiting the Giant Hairball by Gordon McKenzie. This is a fun, he ran the creative group at Hallmark. It's a fun book. An easy read.
I love that title. I feel like my son, my 5-year-old, would think that's cool. Like, he'd love it.
I wish we had time. I would tell you the whole metaphor, but I'll let you find out on your own.
Okay.
Presence by Amy Cuddy, and you can either read the book or certainly go listen to the TED Talk. It's awesome. So this is a good one in terms of really, being able to do your power poses and show up with body language that says, I'm a leader. Crucial Conversations. There's a lot of different kinds of conversation, conflict kinds of books. This is my favorite. Outcome Thinking, and I attended her course years ago. She's local. This one's awesome in terms of really being able to present your ideas and influence with outcomes in mind, not personal agendas, but the value part of those definitions, right? And then the last one, The Speed of Trust. Heavy. And, the greater level of trust that you can build, both in terms of the individual relationships that you have, but also organizationally, the more quickly you can move. So it's critical. But those would be my top, I guess, 6.
Awesome. Well, I might have to pick up a few of those. I'm super interested. I'm a sucker for a good title and cover, so I might start with the hairball one.
Yeah, Orbiting the Giant Hairball.
And I should also say, I didn't start out by this, but we have social workers all over the map who tune in, and we are coming to you guys from Minnesota. I am in the Twin Cities, as well as Kirsten in the suburbs of the Twin Cities. And today we're supposed to hit a high of 72. It's pretty cloudy out there, but it's not raining. So I'm not going to complain. But thank you so much for your time, Kirsten. This has been a joy.
Yeah,
Thank you.
No problem at all. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah.